So I want to start by adding a route to which AngularQ can connect, which allows me to send a message I create in my frontend in my AngularQ application to the server and store it in my Mongo database. Now, for the rest of this course, I'll create two new files in this routes folder here, so on my backend. A messages.js file, which should hold all my message-related routes, and a user.js route, which I'll use later on once I, add user-related routes. Because I want to keep my app.js route here, my app.js routes file here, clean. I only want to render my root route here, the one which loads the Angular 2 application. In my messages.js file, I want to have all message-related routes to which Angular 2 can reach out, and in the user-related file, I'll respectively have all my user-related routes to which Angular 2 can reach out. So in the messages.js file, I, of course, want to use Express, so I will require this because I want to set up the Express router, just like I'm using it here in the app.js file. You may actually make it quicker or use a shortcut here and simply copy and paste all of that here, though I will override this route or I will change this route here. We also need to have access to our message model because I want to interact with it. Remember, in this file, I want to store messages. I will use Mongoose or my Mongoose models to do that. Therefore, I need to import message from models message without the file extension. Now, that's my messages routes file, though the function here, this route, will get overwritten. Before doing that, I'll do something else though. In the app.js file in the root folder, so the file which handles all our requests, I currently only reference my app routes file, this one here. Now I'm going to duplicate this and also create my message routes, or just duplicate it once though, and import my message.js file, which, remember this, exports the router here. So I'm importing this router, and down here where I use the routes, I want to use the message routes, and now this is important. First, I want to use them whenever the user navigates to a URL which contains or which starts with /message. So all the message related routes should have /message in the URL path. And the second important thing is the order here. My message routes need to come first. Because if I would have this order, then every request would first be handled by the app routes. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to handle every request with that. I want to handle requests which have /message with the message routes first. So with the routes I set up in this message.js folder. So it is important that I have the more specific routes first so that I can handle them before more generic routes try to handle them. With that, I can then head over to the message.js file to this route, and I will change it to a post route because I want to store messages on the server. I don't want to get my messages with this function. Here, I simply want to be able to store them, to send them from the Angular 2 application and store them in my backend. Therefore, this will be a post request which gets sent. Now, the path will just be /. And the important thing to recognize here is, in the end, of course, it is messages or message /, because I'm only getting to this file if my request has /message as a URL or /message in front of or at the beginning of the URL. This is when I reach the messages.js file in the routes folder. So every route I set up here invisibly has message in front of the path here. So this is the /message post route therefore. And then here, of course, I don't want to render the index page. Instead here I want to save a message. So let's first create a new one using the Mongoose model we created before. So a new message here. And as you learned it in the MongoDB section, we pass a JavaScript object to this message object, to this message model. Here we want to set up the message we want to store. Now let's have a look at the message model. We're expecting the content and the user. Now, I'll take care about the user in the next section when we actually create users and are able to work with them. For now, all I want to do here is I want to store the content. Now, how do I get the content I want to store though? I simply assume that my request will send me the content in the body of the request. So I can extract it from the request body. This is normal Express.js code to access the body attached to a request. And then the content field. And of course, it will be my job to populate this content field in the front end in my Angular 2 code when I send this request to the backend. But it's an assumption I make here on the backend. This kind of is the interface frontend and backend are communicating with. Now with this message created, I can take my message here and save it. Now in here, I want to provide a callback to check if we got an error or the result of this operation. And first I'll have a look if error is not null, so if we do have an error. In this case, I want to return a response with a status code of 500 for server error and some JSON which allows me to handle this error on the front end. So this will send a JavaScript object, then convert it to JSON. And here I simply want to set up, let's say, a title for this error. An error occurred. And then the error itself. I can simply send the error object here, stored in the error variable. The Mongoose package creates for me in case of an error. This error object here happens to have a message field, which I later on can access like this. This will come in useful in the error handling section, of course. So this is handling the error case and sending the error to the front end. And the other case, of course, is that we're successful. In this case, so if the error is null, we will reach this code where I also want to send a response. I don't need the return keyword here though, because I'm not executing any code after this line. And here I want to set the status code to 201 for everything is okay, a new resource was created, and then send some JSON too. Now here in the JavaScript object, I'll, let's say, send a message. It's of course totally up to you what you want to send here. So here I'm just sending like a message, saved message, so the message the frontend sent me. And then the object will be the result, which actually is the saved message as it now lives in the database. So this will contain the ID and so on. So this is my response. And again, just to highlight this, why don't I put return in front of this statement? I'm using it up here in the error if statement, at least in the end. Well, the reason I'm using it here is if error is not null, we're getting inside of this if block here, in which case, if I don't have return, we send a response. But then we still execute this code. Now, I could, of course, put that in an else block and therefore prevent this from happening. But if I don't want to write an else block, I would execute this code. So I'm setting return here to let the program know that in this case, I not only want to send a response, but I also want to return from this function. So this code then doesn't get executed. This is the reason why I don't use return here. There simply is no code which would get executed after it. The function here ends directly after this response here. So with this, I'm handling error and success case, and I set this up to now be able to store messages in my database. Now, of course, the important question is, how do we get the messages from our Angular 2 frontend to this route, to this function here, which then saves them?